Hi, this is Nick Radge, Manager of the Australian Shares Direct Satellite Program. Today we're going to talk about our January performance and some of the key highlights around the markets. For January, the grind in the ASX continues. We finished down 0.5% compared to the Small Ords Accumulation Index, up 0.9%. It really has been a grind in the Australian market, and we'll talk about that very, very shortly. So the small caps, which is where we focused, is range bound still and remains 10% below the all-time highs. Now, there's been a lot of media in the last couple of weeks about headline returns and how the market has hit all-time highs. However, being a capitalised market, those gains have been buoyed by just very few names, namely CBA, which has had a cracking period of time. And the equal weight market is very similar, and we'll have a look at that very shortly. Our strategy was fully invested during January and will remain that way through February. So taking a look at the weekly chart of the small ordinaries, the small caps, you can see the grind that's going on over the last couple of years, and this is the Achilles heel of our particular strategy. Every strategy has one, and I'm not overly concerned about what's going on here. It's just a sideways market, no momentum in any way, shape or form, and that makes it very difficult for our market to outperform. We've had these scenarios many times in the past, and that's why I'm not in the slightest bit concerned about what's going on here. So we may get some reprieve from that potentially if central banks start easing interest rates, but we'll also talk about some tailwinds in the market, especially in the US market, over the coming year. So this is the equal weight index, and you can see here, very similar to the small caps, we're about 10% off the all-time highs and have been grinding sideways pretty much since the start of 2022. The good news with this sideways consolidation is the longer it takes, the bigger the move out of it will be. Hopefully that move will be upwards. And if we've been in this for a couple of years, it may mean a sustained period of upward momentum, which would benefit us very, very nicely. In terms of the portfolio performance, the red line here is the Shartru satellite. You can see that the correlation over the last couple of years is quite high with the sideways movement. We're just grinding it out. We can't get in on any trends, but that will change over time. Even so, our correlation just in the last 4 years with the benchmark is only about 0.48, and that's a talking point for consideration going forward. And I'm not concerned in any way, shape or form over the very, very longer term. We have had periods of underperformance of the market. You can see back there in the late 90s, but we've also had extensive outperformance over the very, very longer term, and that's what we want to focus on. So going forward, interestingly, 2024, there's a lot happening. We've got this positive January. Now, the January barometer has been around for about 50 years. I think Hirsch brought it in the early 70s. And basically what it says is a positive January tends to point to a positive year. So this, historically speaking, when January is up, the rest of the year was up 12% compared to normal of 8%, and it was higher 86.5% of the time compared to about 76% of the time. Now, interestingly, when January was negative, the annual return is 2.1% on average, and only higher 60% of the time. So there's a fairly big divergence between the two. So we have had a positive January. Also, to add to that tailwind is that we're in the latter stages of the presidential cycle, the fourth quarter, and that tends to be the most bullish and the least volatile. So there's a few tailwinds, but don't get me wrong, we don't adjust our strategy on these kinds of on this kind of data. It's just for general knowledge, a talking point for clients. But all in all, it bodes well for potentially, especially if we can see that ASX break out of that range, potentially a much better year ahead. So as usual, if you have any questions, I'm very open to discussing them with you. You can drop me an email at nick@thechartist.com.au. Thanks a lot.